The king is here.
Good morning. Welcome to WDRBmedia, the voice of the community. I'm your host, Doc Bowman, and today we are going to continue our conversation with Mr. Cornell Wright. We had a conversation with him last Sunday, and it was very good, and I just wanted to continue it. The name of the show is Discover the Best You, and you can find me at Instagram and Facebook, dr.lbowman, and my business website at discoverychirowellness.com. That's discovery, CHIRO wellness.com. Cornell, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me back.
Yes. That was a short and sweet combo we had last week, and I just wanted to continue it from the previous conversation because I think we can go a little bit more in depth about everything. Tell them who you are and what you do real quickly, and then we'll keep that conversation going.
Definitely. I am Cornell Wright, and I am the Executive Director for the North Carolina Office of Minority Health and Health Disparities within the North Carolina Department of Health and Human Services.
You are in the government. So I'm going to put the government on blast just for a little bit. I know you can't say too much, but it's all good. We were talking about the health and disparities affiliated with African Americans here in North Carolina and with the United States as a whole. And with the previous conversation, we were talking about the difference between the other countries, such as France and Italy also, and Canada, how they handled it a lot better than what we have done. How do you personally feel, and I don't know if you can say too much about this, but the way North Carolina handled the COVID-19, do you think we've done pretty good so far?
Yeah, so on the surface, North Carolina was out in front of this much better than a lot of other states. We were one of the first states to even publish the race and ethnicity data in terms of COVID-19, and our stay-at-home order really helped save some lives. And as we started easing restrictions, we started seeing some numbers going up. So the trends are continuing to go up right now. But it's a steady pace that we're seeing, and as we put in other adherences and guidances, we're seeing how more testing and contact tracing in communities has been able to help other people, have a better outcome and bounce back from COVID. Mm-hmm. And we just have to make sure that we keep doing these strategies and approaches that are going to help, especially the historically marginalized populations and minority and underserved communities, really get the resources that are needed to survive and thrive across the board.
So it's interesting. You brought up some good topics right there. One of the things, I'm going to tell you a little mini story here because you were talking about data. I had a patient who's an employer, and one of his employees had to get tested. He was Hispanic, and they took him to, the employee went to one of the free clinics to do the COVID-19 testing, and he tested positive. So, of course, when they test positive, you're supposed to get a paper that states, hey, I've been tested positive. I can't come to work, da-da-da-da-da. They didn't send him anything like that. I think they just sent him like a little text or something. So because of that, he went to one of the clinics that actually you had to pay for, and was $200 for this one. Mm-hmm. And he tested negative. So they gave him the paper saying, hey, you're tested negative, da-da-da-da-da-da-da, you're clear. So I have heard several I have heard several times before that people have had situations where they had false positives. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so it all depends on the nature of the test that you take. There are different types of COVID testing that can produce different results. And if you're not careful, it could do more harm than good if we're not doing the right tests.
Right.
So we have to make sure that we get the best testing available for the people that are being tested, because I've too heard some very similar situations and stories about people testing negative but not feeling the greatest and still being active and getting tested, and finally understanding that whatever testing they were getting done was not working for them, and they eventually did test positive.
Yeah,
And
I've seen
so,
that too.
yeah, and that's the nature of what we're dealing with. We have a lot of people and organizations that are wanting to be involved in testing, but they're not all the same. They're not all made up the same way. And so when we look at the different variations of testing, we have to take that into consideration.
Yeah, because I know they do now. They got one that they can do through your blood and not having to do the swab that goes through your nose. But the accuracy of these tests, there's a lot of discrepancies in them. And then you also have the COVID-19 test that deals with just for antibodies to see if you have the antibody, which means that you were sick from the past. So you have to make sure you're getting the correct one. And I think that's part of the problem. You got too many test kits out there all saying the same thing. And I have a feeling it wouldn't shock me, like even with these vaccines that they're coming out with, they got probably almost thousands of different people trying to come up with the right vaccine. Next thing you know, you're going to have like 20 different vaccines for the same thing, but which one really works the most effectively? And so that's the part where it's going to be interesting to see how they're going to handle that. Because most vaccines, like even with polio, it took them almost 2 or 3 years before they end up even putting it out there on the market. But they're trying to make this one come within the next 6 or 7 months. You know, that's I don't know about that.
Yeah, it's interesting because my wife is a microbiologist and works in pharmaceuticals. And she's been saying all along that even if everything goes perfectly, it's still going to take time for a true vaccine to be available.
Right. And so, again, you know, it's going to be interesting how the government is going to handle the vaccination affiliated with that. Because right now, even with travel, like I went to Puerto Rico in September, and they made it where the governor of Puerto Rico stated himself that you cannot come into his location unless you get tested. You got to get tested 3 days before you get there. And so it takes almost 3 to 6 days for the test results to even come back. And so, you know, I had to put my trip on pause until next year. And because of that, you know, it's just going to be interesting. How are these countries going to regulate that? Because I know, like we had talked off air a few minutes ago, stating that a lot of the countries are not even allowing the United States citizens to even come into their countries right now.
Right. And, you know, something you brought up earlier that I thought that we should touch on a little bit is when you were talking about how people in the Hispanic Latinx communities, you were saying one was, you know, the story about one testing positive and then testing negative. That puts a strain on families, right?
Right.
In a lot of these communities, you have multi-generational families living in the same household. And if we're not careful, like you were saying with testing, we could, see infection rates go up significantly just by one person having interesting results in terms of positive or negative results, and they could be positive and show up negative. And so we've heard cases of 3 generations, 4 generations of family members getting infected by one person.
Oh, yes.
How do they quarantine? How do they isolate? And where are the supports for them to isolate, especially when people are working like hourly wage jobs and don't really have the supports around them to take off because they need to pay bills and rent and things of that nature.
Yeah,
so we're seeing a lot of barriers to what we're seeing in terms of people's care and then their need to be quarantined and isolated. And even if you just think about someone who may be a single parent, how would they isolate in quarantine and still be a parent?
Absolutely. And I've had a situation with a patient. He's from Detroit. His whole family in Detroit got affected, or got infected by the sister coming into the house. The 2 brothers, the sister, the 2 moms all got it, and they all died.
And
so that's interesting. You brought that up because I've seen that happen. This happened like around, I want to say around April or May that this occurred. So, and he was just devastated. He was just lingering around my office all day. I just let him do that because he just didn't have nowhere else to go. He just wanted to be around somebody, and everything was closed. So, with me being essential, I was able to stay open. So I just let him hang in there and just, come in here whenever he needed to, just to have somebody to talk to. And so, what you're saying is absolutely correct. So I want to thank you again for being on the show. I'll have to bring you back again soon so we can continue this conversation. It's been great. And tell them how to find you again.
So definitely you can go to our website, ncminorityhealth.org, and you can find the latest COVID information at ncdhhs.gov. And I personally am on LinkedIn, Facebook. Well, not so much Facebook, but Twitter, Instagram.
Nice.
It's a funny story. I used to be on Facebook much more often, and then now it's just like
Facebook's getting for old people. Instagram is for the young folks.
I didn't say that, you did, but but no, I just don't. I don't use the Facebook app as much as I've used my Instagram, my Twitter, and LinkedIn for personal professional reasons.
Wow,
because you just have a better. I feel like there's a broader reach.
It is with Instagram. It is, and Twitter too. Yes, it is.
Yeah, and especially LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is a really good platform on the professional level. So, but thank you again for having me.
Absolutely.
And looking forward to connecting with you again.
Yes, thank you. And guys, definitely make sure to tune in next Sunday at 8:45 a.m. Discover the Best You. I'm your host, Doc Bowman. Bye.